Good to see you, Mr. African Farmer.
Same here. Good
So,
morning.
how has COVID-19 treated you and your farming business?
Okay, our business, COVID has treated us really good.
Ah, that's very interesting. I mean, having a positive response
Yes, so
from
we did
someone
some
like you.
scenario planning.
Great.
We observed what was happening in Europe and China. And so we did some scenario planning and planned ahead. So by the time it hit Nigeria, before it hit the agri space, we were well prepared. We actually scaled our
When you
production.
talk about scenario planning,
Yes.
please can you expatiate on that?
Yes, so we played out what's happening in the US, what's happening in Europe, what can happen here. So first of all was that if they have a shutdown, that means we can't move inputs. So what do we do? So we bought inputs. Okay, do we scale? So we scaled in some areas. We actually stepped down in some areas. And some particular seeds in the country, we are the only company that has it in the whole country. So everybody's looking for it. And by the time we're coming out with our produce, we have that comparative advantage. So many people focus more on working on their operations, in their operations as against on their operations.
All right. Now, we are having this gradual easing of lockdown. We've heard the announcement yesterday, so I'm sure there will be more movement. What will that mean for the sector?
Well, I don't think it will have so much impact in the positive. Why? Because the interstate is still locked down. And so most of the foods produced have to move state to state. However, there's a general saying, there's a general information around food being able to move. However, the law enforcement agencies are extorting the transporters. So take, for instance, in a place like Shaki in Oyo State, to move food, a bus load, 18-passenger bus load, before they were charging 60, 70, now it's between 90 to 120,000. So it's not going to affect it. However, also, we have challenges with agric inputs imported into the country. So farmers across the country have a challenge of fertilizers now. And so that would affect yield and also input into the livestock. The livestock sector, especially the poultry value chain, they were adversely hit by COVID. So many of them can't sell their farm produce. Their cost of production has increased, and the middlemen are cutting the price. So we need an holistic approach from government to look at how we can work around distribution.
All right. During the course of this lockdown, organizations such as the Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Food Organization have been making so much predictions and projections about food insecurity, not just in Africa, but here in Nigeria. Looking at some of these issues that you have reeled out here, do you see some kind of food crisis on the way? This is farming season anyway.
Yes, I really don't foresee a major food crisis except the influence of climate change. So right now, we've not had the rains come when it should come, and there's a potential challenge of having floods. So if that comes in, we would have a challenge. If we don't have a challenge of flood, then we would balance out, because what would normally go to waste would no longer be wasted and can be converted. And don't forget, we have quite a lot of Nigerians looking inward into the agri space now. We have a lot of multinationals that use a lot of grains and cassava into their production. Many of them are forced now to look into the supply chain within. And 2 years ago, when the price of dollar went up, many of them have changed policies to look inward. And now COVID has just created a level playing field for many to spring up. And I think Nigeria needs to embrace on that now.
Now, talking about those supply chains, that's another area where a lot of agro processors whatever have issues characterized by logistical challenges in sourcing inputs and outputs.
Yes, it's a huge one, especially for the big companies. The small ones can adopt other measures, they can adapt, cut down, but the big companies would have a challenge, because the moment they have to shut down by 50% and lower, that means they have to lay off. That means they can't get to the market. And many of them also depend on importation. So yes, that's the negative side. But the positive side also is that if government comes in to support them, not financially, but support the sector through the Ministry of Agriculture to say, hey, this is the opportunity in terms of putting out the numbers, to say X billion, you have the opportunity to make X billions of naira, and people can move into that sector. Government needs to guide the private sector into the investment. If not, you will find many of the private sector rush into areas like rice now. You have quite a lot of people who rushing into rice. So eventually, a year from now or end of this year, you might have some glut because we don't have enough processing plants. So they need to say, oh, why don't you look into cassava? Why don't you look into tomatoes? Why don't you look into this value chain? These are incentives that needs to happen. And one of the things that happened over the weekend with the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and the 6 commissioners of agriculture, well, 5, Oyo State didn't show up, was to look at how can we begin to look at regional agriculture collaboration as against each state doing their thing. And, you know, so all of them are planning to partner with Lagos, with the Lagos rice, produce for Lagos because Lagos doesn't have the land. You know, so that regional collaboration needs to come in to be able to sustain these multinationals so that post-COVID, they don't go back to importing, but look at the backward integration.
Now, are you aware of the likely invasion of low cost in West Africa coming from the East Africa, particularly Kenya? The Food and Agriculture Organization have been warning, you know, against that. And those of them in the north, Sokoto, Kebbi, and all that will be mostly affected. Are you aware of this?
Yes, I've been following the trend of the low cost invasion in Kenya, Uganda, and co. And it gives me some concern because most of the states that it would affect in Nigeria are the grain producing states. And grain is something we all consume. And so, and I'm not seeing a proactive ministry at state, at federal, at local, addressing that potential. Because it's still potential, we're not really paying attention to it. We need to put in we need to take care of it before it comes here. If not, because most of these farmers are uneducated, and so I see a little challenge if it shows up.
Yeah, so talking about uneducated farmers, it seems, artisans are what we have, you know, in agriculture. I remember the former Minister of Agriculture, who is now at the African Development Bank, talked about making agriculture a business. Where are we in this?
I think there's still a lot of talk around it. We've not really created the platform to bring the youths in. The language the youth speak, we're not speaking that language. Most of the intervention is still addressed towards the rural people. And the scale at which they give 1 hectare, that's 2.5 acres, 15 plots of land, the graduates, that's not sustainable for the graduates. So most of the designs of these interventions and incentives is still for the rural people as against the youths who are educated and who can embrace the value chain massively.
Where can the education system actually come in here, talking about, you know, bringing the youths into agriculture? Because right now we're seeing oil prices plummet. And of course, Nigeria, I think Nigeria has gone past looking at oil as the main source of revenue. They're looking at diversifying. And one area is agriculture. And you can't talk about agriculture without inculcating the youths into it. Where does the education system come in here?
Yes, the education, even if you check most of the institutions, they are not well equipped. So they have facilities and infrastructure that is not well managed. So we need to take, fortunately, I use the word fortunately, COVID has created this online platform. So we need to get people on the online platforms to teach them best practices. And beyond that, we focus too much on production as against value addition. You know, so we need to look into that value addition small cottage, nothing big, nothing medium.
What about research?
Yes, I can tell you we have more than enough research. We should just pick up some of the research that is gathering dust in all these universities. We have the best brains. We only need people who understand the system and can run with it. Really, we don't need anything new. It's either you say the glass is half empty or half full. Nigeria has the glass half full. We just need the right people, not policies again. We need people who can pick these policies and run with it. We don't need theory again, practical.
No more talk.
The youths are willing. COVID has leveled the plane. And somehow, I believe in the government sincerity to try to improve agriculture, but we just need action.
All right, so looking at the whole thing, what's your outlook? What will the agriculture landscape be like post-COVID?
Post-COVID, I think Nigeria is likely to create an economic miracle if we have the right people. Because West Africa, Africa needs Nigeria now. The rest of the world, China is trying to come to Nigeria. US is trying to come to Nigeria. India, all of them are scrabbling for Nigeria. So I see us being able to work an economic miracle if we have people who are practical and action-oriented, implementing policies and strategies.
All right, let's just hope we tap into this great opportunity.
I hope so.
Thank you, Mr. African Farmer,
Thank
for being
you.
part of the show.